Lynne Somerman is joining me today. Lynne Somerman helps entrepreneurs feel less stupid and sad about their money. How's that for an introduction or a bio? Through practical skill building, habit change, and mindset work. She loves speaking about budgeting as radical self-care and coaching a client when they light up, realizing they're not doomed after all. She lives in South Portland, Maine, with her feisty daughter, snaggletooth dog, and chickens named after strong women. I have a list of all the bios of guests, and yours is just crushed it.
Yeah, thanks.
That's gonna
Yeah,
be so hard to follow for future
you know,
guests.
I find that so many money people are dry, and
So many people in
I'm
general are
not.
dry.
So,
So many people in life are dry, especially with their bios.
yeah, I think I have suffered from that same feeling of like I need to be uber professional at all
Mm,
times, and that time of my life is over. I'm a real
mm.
person who just happens to know a lot about this stuff. So.
Now, how did you make that transition, that identity transition then? Let's just get right into it.
Yeah, so I think it's funny. I got into people always ask me like, why did you start your business? And I was like, oh, I didn't really intend to start this business. I it really came out of my own journey figuring out my money stuff
Mm,
and having having had bad money habits and
mm,
having gotten myself into bad money situations, like coming out of college with too much student loan debt and the American dream, lots of credit card debt, lots of student loan debt, a liberal arts degree that I couldn't get a job with, like right. It's like, oh, what a delightful situation I'm in now. So really having to learn all the ways, I read all the books and, I read all the blogs. This is like really before podcasts were a thing, but sort of tried all the things and figured out some things that worked and worked really well. And I started just helping people that I knew, and, those people told other people and so and so. And eventually somebody said, how much do you charge? And I was like, I don't charge money for this. And they were like, you should.
I'm just a nice
And
person.
you do now.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I did that for a little while on the side, and then I was really fortunate in that demand sort of became enough that I was like, I think this can be a thing.
Mm,
And my journey to getting to a point where I feel really comfortable with that and really finding my voice has just really come out of doing it a lot, of talking to a lot of people, helping a lot of people, and doing it over and over again, and finding that way. When I was just telling someone yesterday, I was like, I used to try and sell budgeting, and turns out no one actually wants a budget. Like they may
it's
need a
true.
budget, but nobody's like out there being like, where can I find a budget? Like where can I find a way to restrict my life and feel like I
Yeah,
no
yeah,
one
right.
no one's looking for that. So like it really took
They
a lot
want the
of
result of a budget, which is
exactly.
more money in your pocket or
Exactly. They want to
saved
feel
for
better
later.
about it. They want to
Yeah,
feel like they got a
they want the
raise. They
outcome.
want the outcome. So
Hmm.
it really took a lot of trial and error of figuring out like what's landing with people, and really just letting go of some of my own attachment to feeling like I need to be this like super professional, and just
Hmm.
being like, actually, people want to buy from a human being
Yeah.
who also can teach them and who can also be an expert in this area, but who can do it in a way that feels really relatable and approachable and real, and is able to just say, hey, yeah, you can also be a real person with me. Like you can
Hmm.
bring me your dirty laundry and show me your finances that you're
Hmm.
maybe a little bit ashamed of or
Oh yeah.
anxious about, and that's going to be okay because I'm also a regular person. And like I couldn't do the thing, like I couldn't possibly be a therapist,
I bet you
even
could.
though what I do definitely has like a therapy aspect to it.
You're like a money
Like I
therapist.
tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm not
You're
right.
you're already like a money
Right. There's
therapist.
definitely an aspect of that. Yeah. But yeah, so it's a lot of trial and error, I think, like anybody else. So
Okay,
yeah.
there's a lot in there and a lot of threads that I want to follow. And
Yeah.
now I can't find my pen, so I'm not going to be able to follow any of them because if I don't have a pen, I don't have a brain. That's how that works.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have a pen. So
Yeah.
that's how prepared I am. One thing is that it's like people have asked me like, what makes you qualified to do X, Y, and Z, or in my case, what makes you qualified to help other
Mm.
therapists get clients? It's like, well, I just started doing it and doing more of it, and then I helped a couple people, and then I charged them, and then I kept
Hmm.
doing it.
I just was really helpful,
Yeah,
and I just did do it a lot.
yeah. I just kept solving problems for people, and then and then I needed to create a website to tell people how I do that, you know? And it's like
Right.
people have an incredible way of overthinking things, or overthinking like, how could I build a business or build an online business or a course or whatever? And it really all starts with solving a problem for people and making yourself just ridiculously helpful,
Absolutely. I
you
tell people all
know?
the time, I was like, the best marketing is to be really good at what you do.
Hmm. Hmm.
And really that's what it comes down to. I have, it's funny, I have a fair number of people. I'm sure you have the same thing where people come to me and they're like, I want this sort of business that you have. How did you,
Hmm.
like, what would you give tips to you 5 years ago or whatever? And they always ask, what sort of certification as a coach do you have? And I was like, none.
On
And they were
purpose.
like, well, and I
I
was
don't
like,
need
the
any more
only person who
depth.
ever asked that question are other people who want my job. And I was like, my
And
clients have
yeah,
never asked me that.
and there are
They
people
want to
who've
know, how can
convinced
you help me?
themselves that the only reason I'm not doing like financial coaching or business coaching is because I don't have the credential or the this or the that,
Hmm.
or they you know, they convince themselves I need to be twice as qualified in order to help someone with a problem in their life.
You don't need that. And like, I just really aimed to be as helpful as I can to as many people as I
Hmm.
can. And that's what my clients want. They want
Hmm.
someone to help them. They want someone to help them find the way and get the results. And that's really the primary qualification that you need. Be
Hmm.
helpful. And like, if you find a way that you're not being helpful, be more helpful. Go get like the specific thing that you need in order to be as helpful as you can. And I
Hmm.
don't think that, in my experience, I have not needed a coaching certification or something for that. Now,
Hmm.
do I like, watch podcasts and do videos about like a specific, way to coach better in this situation? Sure. But I don't need a long program for that. I certainly don't
Hmm.
need to go into debt for that. I am fortunate that like there's enough demand for what I do to just be as helpful as I can.
Hmm.
Um, it really, like you said, it just starts with being really helpful and then just making it easy for other people to find you and be able to help more people.
Hmm. Sounds easy when you put it that way.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it's not
then
that
people
it
listening to
happens
this are going,
overnight, but
it's not really that easy, and you need, you know,
I would say it's that simple. It may not be that easy.
that's profound.
Yeah.
My martial arts instructor says that it's one of the few English
Mm,
phrases that he likes to use whenever we're doing like drills or something technical. He always goes, simple but not easy, simple but
yeah.
not easy, and I think
Yeah.
about that a lot
Yeah.
because we have
Yeah.
ways of overcomplicating things. And we also have, I'm shocked at how incredibly unprepared adults are to handle money, to even handle a dollar. So what's up with that?
It's the most common thing that people say to me, like hands down, is I like they're like this like it's like they're revealing a big secret to me. They're like, I don't really know what I'm doing with my money.
And the
I'm like
secret, they assume
I'm
everyone else
like,
does.
of
Yeah,
course you don't know what you're doing.
yeah,
Like, first of all, nobody knows what they're doing.
yeah.
Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. Like, if people listening take one thing away, let me tell you that no one knows what they're doing. If people knew what they were doing, I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah.
Um, but they don't know what they're doing. And I say this, I work with people who make $20,000 a year. I work with people who make multi-million dollars a year.
Hmm.
Everyone has questions about this. They're
Hmm.
different questions, but everyone is confused. And that's
Hmm.
because we don't teach anyone about this. And then we make it really weird to talk about. Like we make
Mm.
it super weird. Like we aren't going to talk to our friends about it. There are things that we don't teach people about, but we make it
Why do you
more
think that
comfortable
is?
to talk about with other, or like our peers or colleagues. And
Mm.
we make money super weird to talk about. So I think it's really, really common. And I think fundamentally there's some issues of just in terms of, people are like, well, why don't we teach this in schools? And I was like, because the adults don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and people are afraid to put their foot down about something.
Yeah.
They're afraid to stake their claim on something like debt or credit cards or the finance
Mm-hmm.
industry or like buying stocks. So it's one of those things that everyone just kind of assumes that someone else is teaching it. Like the school's not teaching it. Well, it
Mm-hmm.
must be your mom and dad, and then your mom and dad are like, well,
They're really confused too.
they're really confused too, and they are like working through their own often like generational kind
Yes.
of issues
Yes.
of spending and how you learned about
Mm-hmm.
money and how you learn about worth,
Mm-hmm.
as a kid and stuff, and all these kind of implicit messages. So half the time parents are still working through all that crap.
Yeah, they don't feel
And
comfortable teaching anybody else about it.
no, and they don't want to screw their kid up either. They don't want to make
Exactly.
it worse. So they're like, let's just
Exactly.
not talk about it until there's a mess, or
Right.
that kid becomes a young adult and
Yeah,
gets their first job and
totally.
realizes I can't live on X amount of dollars, or, what do you mean I have to save for retirement or whatever it is.
Right, right. I also think we do like culturally, and I think this is just sort of a general thing that we do is like there's a lot of advice out there about your money.
Mm,
There's a lot of and it's not bad advice. It's just so generic as to be virtually useless to
hmm
any actual human being. Like spend less than you earn.
Yeah.
That's true. Like you should do that. But how do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you do that in your situation? Like how do you actually make that happen when you don't have the revenue coming in, or how do
Mm,
you like what does that actually look like in someone's life? And so I think we look at these things and the advice is out there and they're like, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I should just like save some money.
mm,
And you're like, great. But then people come to me and they're like, but I don't know how to do that. I know what I should be doing. I don't know how to get myself doing that. And that's sort of why
hmm
I sort of like you said in my intro, it's like practical skill building, habit change, and mindset work, because you get those three things going together, and that's how you actually do the thing.
Well,
Because
people
spending
have,
less than you earn is more than just a skill,
well, then
you
people
know.
have no vision into what's actually happening with their money, or where it's going, or in the case
Mhm.
of business owners, where it's what's coming in and what's going out. So we end up making decisions completely randomly based on
Mhm.
emotion and based
Mhm.
on I just had a really
Mhm.
good week in private practice, so I
Mhm.
think I should get a new MacBook Pro.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Or you know
absolutely.
what I mean? It's so reactionary and it's so blind.
Completely.
It's just it's incredible how we allow ourselves to just be completely either riding the wave or getting pulled under on
Yeah.
any given day. A therapist can have a really good day of clients, meaning all six of them showed up, all six of
Right.
them
They all
paid, and
paid.
you're like, I'm rich, thank God. And the next day, half of them cancel, and you go, I'm
Hmm.
poor, dear God,
Yeah.
what am I going to do?
Hmm.
So, how do you help
Yeah.
people through that?
So, like for me, this really comes down to having a really good view of the reality of the situation, right? So, knowing where, like having some sort of system for tracking where money is coming in and where it's going out, and stepping back from that enough to see some trends. So, recognizing like, okay, this time of year is always busy for me. That doesn't mean I should go invest in some new big thing,
Hmm
because next quarter is like historically not going to be as busy. So I want to put some money aside. So like seeing some of those trends, seeing some cash flow things, recognizing that a good day does not a good business make. I think it's really easy when things are going well or badly to decide that that is the new reality.
hmm
And so I talk a lot about focusing on facts rather than feelings.
hmm
How much money is in your bank account is just a fact. It doesn't need to be a feeling. It doesn't mean anything about who you are or who your business is. So really focusing on like hard numbers, like giving yourself the permission to like look at actual numbers and feel whatever you're going to feel about them. And then you can start to make a plan from there.
Mm.
And I'm a big fan, as you know, John, I love making budgets. I'm
Uh-huh.
like a huge fan of like budgeting in your personal life and in your business. So, and what I mean by that is really just making a plan for where the money is going to go.
You kind of
You
have to
know,
reframe that word, because when you say budget, people
yeah,
tense up and they
they're
go,
like, ooh,
I'm
gross.
good. I'm just going to keep,
I hate
I'm
budgets.
going to work with a
Because we
financial
think of
coach who
budgets as
doesn't
like a
make me do
diet,
that. Yeah, exactly.
right? And it really, for me, budgeting is really about self-care. It's about
Mm,
seeing this is the resource that I have, and it happens to be money. What do I need and want it to do for me before I get more of it? And so for me, budgeting is really about making a decision about what your money is going to do before your emotions do it for you,
mm.
because
There
you're
you
going to
go.
spend that money. So finding a way to do that, and it really can be as, I talk a lot with people about, money is just a resource that we have. It's a finite resource. The money that we have in our bank account right now is finite. We're going to get more of it. We don't know how much or exactly
Hmm
when, but we will get more of it. But the money we have today, we know exactly how much we have of it. And we get really tied up in emotions when we talk about money. I ask people like, what do you do to manage your money? And suddenly they're talking about their grandparents and, the
hmm
Great Depression and this, and their partner is a spender and they're more of a saver. And it's like, no, 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 that's not,
Yeah.
we don't need to go there. I mean, it's useful context, but that's not really the same sort of thing. So one of the things that I do is I ask people to tell me about like their weekend.
hmm
How did you decide what you were going to do with your weekend? What plan did you have? What changed? What did you do when that changed? How did you decide what needed to get done, what did you want to get done, and because of the same sort of thing, you have a weekend, you have 48 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have the same emotional ties to that. So we have this sort of resource, and we can just say, what do I need and want this to do for me before I get more of it? So I think that can be a really useful reframe of just saying, like, this is just a resource that I have, like time or energy or attention, any other resource that I have, that I will get more of it, but I don't know when. So what do I want this resource that's sitting right in front of me? What do I need it to do for me? When you're planning your day or your weekend, or I have this much energy, what do I want to get done right now? It can be that same sort of thing, and that can be a really helpful reframe of taking sort of all of this context and being, okay, that's important, but it's sort of a separate thing. It's a separate practice of working through that stuff than it is of saying, okay, well, these are the bills that are coming out in the next week, and then I've got a little bit left over, so I'm looking at my historical information. Maybe I'm going to save a little bit, or maybe I will invest in that thing, or whatever it is, going from there. And there's different systems and tools obviously within that, but I think starting with that, setting some of those emotional mindset, and like you said, generational things, taking that and going, yes, it's important context and I want to look at that, but that's going to be a separate thing from deciding what I need this money to do for me.
Why do you think that money is such an emotional thing?
That's a great question. I think it's just money is so much about worth, right? Because we use the same word for like your net worth, like meaning how much money do you have?
I've never thought of it
And
that
as
way.
well as like self-worth, like how much am I worth? I think we really tie those two things together, like like as a society, and I think we all sort of do this, like people with more money, we value as being better people. And I think if you actually stop and think about it, people are like, well, I don't really believe that people with more money are just better people. But I sort of like, there's like all of these systematic ways that shows up and reinforces that. And I think, and because different people have different amounts of it, we all have the same amount of weekend. When we go into the weekend, we all have 48 hours. So there's no value attached to like, oh, they must have worked harder, they have more weekend than I do, or, these different things. And so we have this like societal intrinsic value. So I think it does take a lot of work. And I don't think, it's people feel really ashamed that they attach all this meaning to it. And I think it's an inherent thing. Money is, we have as a society made it this emotional thing, but we also have an ability to separate that a little bit and say, okay, for me, I'm going to have these be two separate things. So the day-to-day management of my money can be a different thing than the relationship to my money. And they're both important, but they're different.
So the way how I know you is that you worked with me. And as my mom would say, bless your heart. Because in fact, I think you were the first person that ever worked with me on my money.
Yeah.
Which again,
well,
bless
a
your
lot
heart.
of people like never work with anybody on their money.
I just remembered that, and I can't remember how I found it. It was just through a Facebook group or something, and I felt like I hit the jackpot because it was like, even though I think I'm decent at business, I'm getting a lot better. I've gotten a lot better since I worked with you, and because I worked with you. But I do remember what it felt like when you and I were getting started, and even like working together. And it's like, okay, John, just send me your stuff. Send me your finances. And I'm like, oh, you have to see all of it. Like
you're like, this is like very raw, real, vulnerable stuff.
It's like showing you my report card when I'm in fourth grade. I'm like, can I just show you the top part? Right. I was always good in social sciences, which is not surprising, and really bad at math. So like, can I just show you the social sciences part? But it was that feeling of like, oh, I do have to show you all of it, and I do have to potentially come to terms with some difficult realizations. And I will say, one realization that I'll never forget is I had thought that at the time of one of my businesses, I was way more profitable than I was. And I remember sitting down, and I almost felt mad at you for telling me I wasn't. And literally all you were doing was reading the numbers and going, Yeah, so gross revenue looks really good. Your profit as the owner looks really bad. Or you didn't say it that, but you just said
Yeah.
that literally this is what you're profiting. And I'm just going, dear God, that can't be right. And then I'm
Right.
going, dear God, what do I need to change? I need to make tons of changes. And I just remember that feeling. And since then, I've seen so many therapists I work with. We've had that kind of moment, especially group
Hmm.
practice owners who
Yeah.
they try to scale up and they try to scale too fast, and their gross
Hmm.
revenue is through the roof, and they're making less than they ever made as a solo practitioner,
Yeah,
as one
absolutely.
person. So I remember how emotional that felt for me, and I almost didn't want to hear it, and yet
Yeah.
it was pivotal because it changed a lot of what I did. I started behaving differently. I did cut down on expenses. I
Hmm.
reevaluated the model. I reevaluated my
Hmm.
team, which was huge, and has always been and still is kind of a big part of money, how money issues show up for me is
Yeah,
team and wanting to please people or wanting to whatever
absolutely.
at the
Yeah,
cost
especially as a
of myself.
therapist, that's
Yeah,
what you're called to do, is help people
yeah,
and to be there for people.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it was transformational for me in working with you, and it was not just financial coaching. Really, it's a bit of everything. It's a bit of therapy. It's a bit
Hmm.
of personal coaching. It's strategy.
Hmm.
It's decision making. But it was just huge for me. Um, and
It can
then you got too
it's usually a
popular.
very emotional thing.
Yeah,
Like when I sort of like reveal the facts,
yeah.
it can be really difficult. And I think people they either get mad at me or they cry. It's
Either one. I probably cried
it's
later.
one or the other. But I think I see what you're talking about with group practices, and I see this with people who are
Hmm.
like trying to scale by growing their team and moving to that sort of agency model or
Hmm.
like the group practice or whatever that might look like for their business. I see that super commonly. They're like, but I'm making so much money. And they're like, no, you're making so much revenue.
Huge
It's a
difference. Oh
huge,
my gosh.
huge different thing. And what I hear people say, I never forget, I had someone say, I'm really sick of being the hardest working, lowest paid member of my team.
Always.
And I was like, that's it exactly. That is
Hmm.
exactly it. And then I
Yep.
think so when you move to that group model, people are working harder than they've ever worked,
Yeah. And
and
they're more
ultimately,
stressed than ever. They have more
frequently
liability.
taking
Yeah.
home less than they've ever made.
Yeah. And when you ask them why the hell are you doing that, why are you allowing that to go on your business, they usually say because I'm the business owner. It's almost like so I must bear the burden of this whole thing that
Yeah,
I built, this whole beast that I've built. When in fact it's the opposite. You should treat yourself like your best employee. And if this
because
thing
you
that
are
you've
your best
built
employee.
doesn't start feeding you soon, are going to resent it.
Yeah,
You're going to burn out.
yeah,
You're going to crash and
absolutely.
burn. And if you're not already, and usually that's when therapists reach out and they go, "Oh, I'm in big trouble," or "I've got a
Right.
$30,000 outstanding
Uh-huh.
accounts receivable or whatever. Now I need help." And then they call you and they go, "Can you
Yeah.
help? Can you help me
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I
recover?"
think that's so true. And I think that people, um, like you said, they just have this idea that being a business owner is about sacrifice.
Yeah, I don't know who started that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
dumb. That's
yeah,
not what it's about.
yeah.
Like it doesn't need to be like that, and it shouldn't be like that because you can't help anyone if you go out of business,
Mm,
which is what will happen.
yeah.
And which is difficult to hear, I think, especially when you look at the numbers and go, if this continues, you're going to go out of business.
Mm,
And it may take years, but it will,
yeah.
like that will happen. If you don't, like profit is how you pay yourself. Profit is
Mm,
how you grow your business. Profit is how you protect your business from a slow cash flow season.
mm,
It's how you protect yourself from an employee that you thought was good that didn't turn out well. Like that's the point of profit, as well as just paying yourself for taking the risks of being the business owner.
mm,
You know, being the business owner might be more work, but it should definitely be better
mm,
than being an employee. Like it
yeah.
should, you should have benefits of that. And I think that's a perspective shift that just generally speaking of taking these risks should benefit me in some way,
Mm,
not take away from me.
mm,
So I think that's a big one, but yeah, so sometimes that really just takes a good, like, like you said about looking at the model, like, I've had some people I've worked with, when we looked at their model, we found that some of the people that work for them were actually actively costing them money to have on the
mm,
payroll, because of, various things. And it should have made sense, but it didn't, when we actually looked at the numbers, it didn't make sense.
mm,
And some people, there are models that are profitable but they're not scalable at that profit level.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that can be a really difficult one, is to actually stop doing something that is profitable
Mm-hmm.
because it's not profitable enough, or it's not profitable enough for the level of work that you put into it or the level of enjoyment that you get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the first questions I always ask people is, what sort of business are you trying to build?
Mm-hmm.
Because the point of this is that, it's about your life and the business that you want. You don't want to be building a business that might be profitable, but you hate.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't want to go into group practice, you don't have to, you know?
And most people are quite accidental in the way they fall into
Yeah.
it and fall into group practice ownership. It's a point where I think I differ even from other private practice consultants. Is most people say, yeah, scale that bad boy, scale it up, hire 10 people, get the office suite, whatever, buy the building, whatever you need to do, because you've got to scale this thing. And it's like the glorification of scale. And
Mm-hmm.
I sat down with one of my own coaching clients not long ago who has been thinking for a while about her first hire,
Mm-hmm.
turning into a group practice. And I said, what would be, and she's really ambivalent about it, really, really ambivalent. And I'm like, well, what would be a meaningful amount of money that making this hire could bring you that would be
Mm.
meaningful, right? Or be life changing? And she said, like $1,000 a month, I think it was $1,000 or $1,200 a month. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, okay, just for the sake of the argument, if someone forced you to make that money another way, how would you do it? And she had five
Mm.
ideas, right
Yeah.
off the bat. And I went,
Yeah.
okay, so let's just think about that, right? Because there's a lot of ways to make money, well, your business is case in
Mm-hmm.
point that there's a lot of ways to make money, especially when it comes to making money online, or again helping people
Mm-hmm.
solve a problem, or doing things that don't necessarily mean a 10-person team is the only way to make X amount of dollars,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to sacrifice my income or my life or my family or my kids or whatever for the next year and a
Mm-hmm.
half so that I can scale this thing. Like it's just madness.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said, the glorification of scale.
Mm-hmm.
Scale is,
Maybe
I
that'll be
think
the
we
name of
think
this
of it as
episode. I
like,
should write that
oh,
down.
we have to scale, we have to scale. And what we mean by that is I want to make more money. And those aren't necessarily the same thing. You don't necessarily need to scale in order to make more money. Sometimes you do, but sometimes it's like you said, well, what else could you do if you had to do this? I don't know if you're familiar, John, with the book Profit First.
Oh
It's
yeah,
by Mike McAllowitz.
yeah.
So
It's gotten really popular among
yeah,
therapists the past
exactly.
year or so.
It's a fantastic book, and I love it and recommend it. And I work with a lot of people to implement that system into their business, which has been awesome. But one of the things that I love in there is he says, what would you do if I said you had to do twice as much with half as much resources?
Mm-hmm.
And your brain immediately is like, well, I could do this and I could do that and I could do this. And you're like, there you go. Start with those things.
Right.
How can you start doing those things right now? And then if you still are like, yeah, and I'm hungry for scale, or maybe you love managing people, in which
Right.
case, by all means,
Right.
that can be a way to do that. But really, being thoughtful about it rather than accidental, like you said, is really common. So thinking about like, what sort of business do you want to run? What sort of life do you want to be having? And what sort of revenue do you need to have to support that? And like get really creative. Like, how could I get to that point? And it could be that you might look at your expenses and say, you know what? When I'm looking at it this way, this thing is a nice to have. It's not a need to have.
Yeah.
And I would rather have that money as profit.
Yeah.
I would rather have that money go to me so that then I don't have to hire somebody when I really don't want to have to manage anyone.
Yeah.
You make different decisions when you sort of, I don't want to say put the gun to your head, but just sort of ask yourself the question, like the hard question of like, what would I do if I needed to do this thing without doing it the way that I'm thinking that it has to be done?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it can, really, and again, looking at your numbers, looking at real numbers, I know for me, I used to have a bookkeeping practice, as you know, and I don't anymore. And that business was profitable. It wasn't that it wasn't profitable, but in order to scale that, it would require bringing on more team members and more work. And it didn't end up being, I didn't want to do that. I just
Yeah.
it didn't make sense for me. And it wasn't the sort of business that I really wanted to be building. It wasn't what I wanted to be known for.
Well, and it wasn't really the thing that was going to help you have the most impact.
Exactly.
Because this is really, and I'm just again going to compliment you. sincerely. This like coaching really is like what people in
Yeah.
my mastermind group call your zone of genius, right? And so
Yeah.
for you to be doing a lot less of that because the
Yeah.
bookkeeping business is viable, but a lot of moving parts to it is really a
Yeah.
loss for you, and it's a loss to
Yeah.
people that you could help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you could have
Yeah.
very well said, screw it, I'm going to still keep scaling it. Or people rationalize themselves retroactively, right? Or with the group practice and everything, they go, I've already started this thing, I've already built it, I've already gotten people
Right.
involved, therefore I
Like I'm
must
stuck
be a
with it
martyr.
now.
And yeah, like I can never divorce this thing.
Yeah.
And that's just,
It's just not true.
it's just not true. And I guess, so what would you say, what was that process for you like in letting go of the bookkeeping business, ending with those clients? And did you have any fear of like, what if people are upset or mad or like,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. When I, so initially, actually, I had come to that decision. I was trying to I felt this tension between coaching and bookkeeping, and I felt like I needed to pick one to focus on, and then I could come back to the other one. And when I looked at it, initially, I was like, I think I'm going to focus on bookkeeping because at the time there was like really strong demand. I was like, I have so many people that want to be doing this with me. And I like it was taking up so much of my brain space. But then when I actually talked to my own business coach and she asked me a question that really threw me. She was like, "But do you love it?" And I
Mm,
was like, I mean, I like bookkeeping. I'm like, I'm good at it.
yeah.
People want to buy it from me. It's easy to sell. And she was like, "But do you love it?" And I was like, I mean, but when I coach people and I was like, I feel called to do that work.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is the work that only I can do.
Hmm.
And for me, it really came down to I was like, bookkeeping isn't what my TED talk is going to be about.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
that's not the big stage for me. And I was like, and that's where I want to help the most people. And so for me, coaching is a way that I can do that. And so, but yeah, once I made the decision, I was like, oh, how am I going to do this? What am like,
Mm,
how am I even going to do, like, how am I going to tell my clients, like, how am I going to help them make this transition?
hmm.
What about my team who is relying on this income to do this work? And it actually ended up being much easier than I thought it was going to be. The timing worked out well for the people working for me. Were already thinking about scaling back working for me and were afraid of telling me that
Yeah.
because they had other things coming on. And so it ended up being perfect for them. I had a colleague who was looking for more bookkeeping clients.
Hmm.
So, and my clients overall were really responsive, and a number of those people continued to work with me for coaching. They were like,
Hmm.
you know, this is really the part that I get the most value from with
Hmm.
you anyway.
Hmm.
So it ended up being a lot easier than when I was able to just separate and go, you know what, it's just business.
Hmm.
This is the change that I need to make. Things really lined up much easier than I thought they were going to be. And it was a much smoother process than I anticipated.
Yeah.
I decided a lot of, like, I told myself a lot of stories about how that was going to go.
Of
And
course.
like we do,
That's
right?
called
I
anxiety. Yeah.
I made all of these decisions of like, oh, everyone's going to be like this, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And when I was able to just go, you know what, the fact is, I'm getting out of this part of my business. It went really well, and I was really fortunate that I was able to. Not only was I able to successfully transition that part of my business, I ended up cutting probably 20 hours a week out of
Hmm.
my schedule.
That's
I kept
huge.
all of my profits. Um, I was
That's
like, wow,
amazing.
I should have, like, this is amazing. Like,
Yeah.
this is really, and I was able to be so much more present for my coaching clients.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I was able to help those people deeper and better than I've ever been able to do before, because now I'm focused on the thing that I am called to do, the thing that only I can do, that I love doing, that lights me up, that when I get off a coaching call, it could be 10 o'clock at night and I get off a coaching call and I'm so energized
Hmm.
because this is the thing that I love doing, that helping people with. So
Mm.
it ended up being so much better and easier than I thought it was going to be.
There's no substitute for focus and depth,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know. And so for people listening, we have to constantly clear things out of the way that are standing between us and focus and true depth in your work.
Yeah.
And that's a hard
Yeah,
thing to do,
absolutely.
and it might involve pissing some people off, right? But what's also interesting about that is that actually gives you a lot of good information too, right? It's the same.
Yes.
So for a therapist, when they raise their fee $10 a session, many therapists are petrified about doing that, and yet guess what? It's good for your business. It also illuminates the relationship a little bit, and it illuminates the relationship between the client, how much they value us or value our time, our service, etc. So it's kind of the
Absolutely.
same for you in a way, which is that if people are going to be jerks, that's actually good information for you, because then you can go, cool, you're
Absolutely.
not going to be part of my coaching practice.
Right. And that's okay. They can work
Yeah,
with somebody. There's other people out there.
yeah, exactly.
I think it's funny too that you bring up price changes because I also went through a price change in my coaching practice last year, um, which I was so anxious about for so long. I had so much stories about what was going to happen there, and I put it off and put it off and put it off. And when I eventually did it, not only was it actually get easier to sell, but everyone I work with now shows up to every single appointment. They've
Hmm.
done all of their homework. They're
Yeah, they're
asking
way
me
more bought in.
insightful questions. They're so much more present.
Hmm.
I'm more present for them. And I'm able to work with fewer people, and everybody is getting more out of that.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, this is just a really powerful shift um, that allowed me to help those people so much better. And
Yeah,
they're getting so much better results because they are more invested in that and they're showing up for that more. So,
awesome.
yeah.
Lynn, we have just a couple minutes left, and so for people listening who maybe feel like either my money's a mess and I just need to get started, or I'm decent with money but I know it could be better, what would you suggest they do after listening to this episode?
Yeah. So, my number one tip for people who are just like, I don't even know where to get started is to start trying to get present with your money. And I actually have on my website at lynnesomerman.com, there's a right at the top of the page, there's like I have a free email challenge that helps you sort of walk through this. But essentially what it is you're tracking what money is coming in and out of your life. And you're trying to train yourself more than anything. You're not trying to do anything with that information. You're not tallying this up and wearing it like a hair shirt about how much money you should or shouldn't be spending on X, Y, and Z. It's really about developing a habit of looking and paying attention and mindfulness about that and like coming to looking at your money in sort of a meditative way, like, oh, this is just a piece of information, and just getting really present with that. And that will have a huge impact. And again, you're not trying to change your behavior here, but your behavior will change in a really effortless way if you're able to be thoughtful and present and mindful with it. And then from there, then I love budgeting. My favorite tool is called You Need a Budget, or YNAB.
Uh-huh.
I've been using it. This is my 14th year of using it, which makes me feel
It
way
deserves
older
some
than
sort of prize.
like I know. I'm like I talked to them and I was like, they're like they sent me a T-shirt and like a free year of YNAB, and I was like, come on, do you have any idea how much money I buy all my clients YNAB like when I'm coaching with them, and I'm like, I spend so much more money than your other clients, but I just love that tool. So I love budgeting, but really as a first place is just finding a way to get present
Mm.
and to let yourself sit with the facts and let yourself feel whatever it is that you're going to feel, and then just let that sort of settle out
Mm.
and know that you can look at this, you can pay attention to it, you can be present with the facts of your financial situation, and it doesn't have to mean anything about who you are.
Hmm.
And then from
That's
that place,
huge.
then you can start to build new habits, you can start to build new skills and workflows and those sorts of things. But it really so much more successful if you're able to come to it from a place of just like, this is just pieces of information that I'm going to use, and I'm in charge of what happens from here.
Hmm.
So
This has been a fun one.
yeah, this
I
has been
had an
great.
idea that I had an idea that it would be a fun one, and I was right. An enriching one, because
I love talking about this stuff. So
yeah, that's it shows. And when you're fired up about what you do, people notice that and they're drawn to you, for that, and it means your work actually means something to you.
right.
Um, well, and again, just to reiterate or to make a plug, the work that you and I did together, it still drives like my thoughts and the way I look at my numbers and the way I think about it and the way I put myself first, honestly, which is the
Yeah.
hardest thing for me personally to do and for many therapists to do. So I think you are unlike a lot of kind of money people in that you can do the numbers. Like,
Yeah.
we have to look at the numbers, we have to look at the hard facts, but also you really know how to have a delicate hand with people, or in this case with
Hmm.
business owners, who are going to have emotions with all this stuff. So that's a rare
Yeah.
combination. So for therapists listening, if you want help with your money, highly recommend getting in touch with Lynne. Again, lynnesomerman.com. Yeah.
Yep, LynneSomerman.com. Yeah,
And we'll
like
put a
you,
link
John,
there.
my social science grades were way better than my math grades. Like I've
Awesome.
I've learned how to be better at the numbers, but I'm way more of a people person
Yeah.
in, ultimately.
You like what the numbers can do for people, right? You like it.
Exactly.
Yeah. You like the
It's
outcome.
not the numbers that I love. It's
Yeah.
it's what it can do in terms of changing your life.
This is why we have a lot of parallels, I'm realizing, as business people, because I say the same thing about digital marketing. I'm like the digital
Mhm.
marketing guy and like the Google Ads guy.
Right.
And I said in a video the other day, like a YouTube video, I was like, you guys are going to be shocked that I don't love digital marketing. I don't wake up and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I can't wait to do Google stuff. I,
Right.
I do that for therapists and I teach therapists that because I love what it does for you and you can have a fully
Exactly.
booked practice and be confident in it and
Exactly.
trust it. Like that's
It's a
what I
tool.
love.
Yeah.
It's a tool. Yeah. So a lot of people get that wrong. So it's really funny that you have that about, money too. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. I'm good with numbers, but better with people.
same.
Yeah.
Lynne, thanks again for being here. So we'll put the link in
Yeah.
the show notes. Folks, head to lynnesomerman.com to reach out, get in touch, follow Lynne
Yeah.
wherever wherever
Yeah,
you
and
are,
I've
wherever.
just put
Yeah.
something up on my website where you can ask anonymous, embarrassing money
Oh, I
questions.
like that.
So you can find that on my homepage too. So that I'll be answering in future content, social media. I mentioned to you, John, I'm planning on starting a podcast. So really, ask away, and it's been super fun. People have been asking juicy stuff that we
Oh
might
yeah.
not otherwise want to have our name associated with. So that's a great place too to get some of the embarrassing stuff out of the way.
I
So
love it. That's really cool. I might hop on
yeah,
there and ask a couple. I'll
yeah,
remember not to
awesome.
sign it with my initials or
Yeah,
something by accident.
anonymous. Definitely
Yeah.
not John.
Definitely not John Clark. Definitely not. Lynn, thanks
Yeah,
again for doing this. It's good to see you
yeah.
again,
Thanks so
and
much. Good to connect with you again.
I'll talk to you soon.
Alrighty.